There's a kind of societal expectation that pregnancy and birth is this beautiful, miraculous, special, amazing experience. But for many women, it's really not. In this video, I want to talk about the dark side of pregnancy and birth. And then I'm going to go over some of the signs that you might be experiencing postnatal or prenatal depression. My name is Karen. I'm a clinical psychologist with over 15 years of experience working in the public sector and in the private sector, and working with women who have gone through the horrible experience of prenatal or postnatal depression. It's really hard when your experience is so different to everybody else's, or that's how it feels. I've seen prenatal and postnatal depression in women from every kind of demographic. And I want to share this information with you so that if you're thinking about having a baby, you're better prepared in case something like this might happen. And if you're going through something like this, you can better understand your experience. So first I want to talk about why pregnancy and birth can be such a scary experience. For a start, you might not find it as easy to fall pregnant as you expected. Many women have a lot of difficulty falling pregnant, and that brings its own set of challenges. Secondly, you might have a really difficult and awful pregnancy. It happens. Women suffer from horrific physical symptoms like vomiting day in and day out through the entire pregnancy, or horrific heartburn or back pain or high blood pressure or gestational diabetes or whatever it might be. And these things can cause a pregnancy to quickly become high risk. But even if it's not high risk, it can be really physically uncomfortable. Some women self through pregnancy and it's absolutely lovely, and that is wonderful. But other women really battle. Maybe you've had a great pregnancy and you have a perfect, well-organized birth plan. You've gone to all your classes, you have a doula, you're going to do a water birth or whatever it might be. But birth plans often do not go according to plan. Giving birth is actually a really dangerous thing and used to be the highest cause of mortality for women back in the day. In these days, it's much safer, but that doesn't mean that you're going to sail through it with absolutely no problem according to your lovely, perfect, natural birth plan. In fact, 8% of all births experience serious complications. That's a lot. And between 10 and 20% of women suffer from prenatal or postnatal depression, and that is according to the established sources. That's reported. Of course, if you consider that many women just suffer in silence and do not seek help or do not have access to health services, the figure is probably a lot higher. Even the smoothest and most natural birth may not be what you expected, and it always involves some highly uncomfortable experiences. There are many strangers poking and prodding your body. There's pain, there's mess, there's embarrassing things that happen, which are completely normal, but which you might not expect. So sometimes you have a so-called easy natural birth, or you have a planned cesarean that you wanted, and yet it just was not how you thought it would be. Whatever kind of birth you had, you may find that you emerge from the experience with some pretty serious emotional and physical scars, because giving birth can be quite a trauma for your body and for your mind. I'm not telling you this to scare you if you're at the beginning of your pregnancy journey. I'm telling you this so that you'll be better prepared. And if you're already experiencing some darkness in your pregnancy journey, so you can better understand what is going on. Another issue that can arise is that the process of pregnancy and birth can stir up all kinds of old traumas. Maybe you didn't have an easy childhood and you're afraid that you might not be the kind of mother that you would like to be. If you've given birth, you're suddenly responsible for this little being that is entirely dependent on you. And that can be super scary in itself. You might feel unprepared. You might feel really scared. Maybe you can't stop thinking, am I good enough? Am I up for this job? Am I doing things right? Or am I doing everything wrong? These kinds of thoughts are completely normal for new moms. But it doesn't mean that just because it's normal, doesn't mean that it's not really hard. It's hard. For some lucky moms, having a baby and the first year after birth is lovely and they sail through it, and those are the moms that put up loads and loads of posts on social media. Although there are also the moms that put up posts on social media that show only one side of the picture, whereas actually they're really battling behind the scenes. For many moms, breastfeeding is not the beautiful, lovely experience that they might have expected. In fact, breastfeeding is a horrible, painful, traumatic experience that may make you feel like a complete failure as a woman, as a mother. Be kind to yourself, because you are not alone. For many women, breastfeeding is extremely difficult and even agonizing. There are lots of physical things that may happen, and you may have not enough milk or too much milk, and these things are also scary. You might not be able to afford a lactation consultant, and if you can afford a lactation consultant, it may not always be helpful. Maybe you just hate breastfeeding. Maybe it's not your thing, and you feel uncomfortable and awkward and you don't want to do it, but you feel like it's your duty as a mother, as a woman, like you should. Maybe you turn to bottle feeding with a sigh of relief, or maybe you always plan to bottle feed, and that is wonderful if that's the case. But for many women, not being able to breastfeed when they really wanted to is agonizing and desperately, desperately sad. And there's a kind of grief around the whole breastfeeding thing. Having a new baby is also really not easy. Everybody knows that you cannot expect a lot of sleep, especially in the first few weeks and months. But maybe your baby just cries and cries and cries. Maybe you can't sleep at all. I had a client, I'll call her Jennifer. Jennifer came to see me in quite a state. She had longed for a baby for a long time, and she had gone through IVF, but it didn't work. I think she'd gone through quite a few cycles, if I remember correctly. And she and her husband finally gave up on the whole idea. And then she fell pregnant with this miracle natural baby. She was in her early 40s, and she was overjoyed that she was going to have the baby that she had wanted and tried for so long. But the pregnancy was hard and the birth was traumatic. And then the baby just cried. Jennifer went back to the pediatrician time and again and was told it's normal for babies to cry. But when I inquired more deeply into it, this baby never stopped crying. She cried non-stop 24/7. Jennifer was beyond exhausted. She was a wreck. She was actually starting to have hallucinations from lack of sleep and from exhaustion and from fear because she didn't know what was wrong and what was going on. It took quite a few sessions for her to become calm enough to accept my advice to seek a different pediatrician and to get more support, because I had a strong feeling that there was something really wrong that was going on. It turned out that the baby had a horrible case of severe reflux, which meant that the baby couldn't sleep unless she was in a completely upright position. So as soon as she was put down, she began to scream because of the pain of the reflux. And my client Jennifer thought that she was a failure as a person. She thought she was a failure as a mom, but actually the medical system was failing her. I hear a lot of these kind of stories, and it's really heartbreaking because something that should or could or would have been a lot easier goes on for a long time and causes so much suffering. If you're enjoying this video so far or finding it useful in any way, then please click the like and the subscribe buttons. It's really useful and it's very encouraging to me to continue making these videos. I hope you find it helpful. Most new moms have this expectation that it's all going to be worthwhile when they look down at this precious miracle of life. But maybe that's not how you feel at all. And it's completely okay to have all kinds of unexpected feelings. Maybe you look down and you see the baby as this wrinkled, awful alien and you actually feel no connection whatsoever. Maybe you feel completely numb. Maybe you're scared. Maybe you're angry. Maybe you're resentful. Maybe you're grieving. These are all very common emotions that come up for new moms. Or even for moms that have been moms before. This doesn't necessarily happen just only after the first birth. It can strike at any time after any birth. Maybe you didn't have a difficult pregnancy at all. Maybe you're currently pregnant and the pregnancy is going really well, but you don't feel well. Or maybe you sailed through the birth and everything was great, but you do not feel okay. Postnatal or prenatal depression can strike at any time. It can be after the first, second, third, fourth, or fifth birth. It can even happen after an adoption. You might not have a history of depression. Maybe you've never been depressed in your life. You might not have a family history of depression. And yet, you feel all these weird and awful and uncomfortable feelings. Or, like I said, no feelings at all. And family and friends and even your doctor might dismiss it and say, you've got baby blues. Or you might have been handling everything perfectly fine. And for the first few months, it was easy. And suddenly, over time, even up to the end of the first year of your baby's life, depression might start to creep in. You might begin to feel really miserable. Postnatal or prenatal depression can be so severe that you're unable to function and that you're unable to cope. But it can also be quite low-key. So how do you know if you're just experiencing adjustment difficulties because of adjusting to a new baby and a new person in your life, or whether you're experiencing something more sinister? I'm going to go through the signs and symptoms of clinical depression so that you can work out whether there might be something more serious happening for you. Symptoms can develop slowly or they can come on really quickly. About a third of women with postnatal depression begin to experience the symptoms while they're pregnant, and that's why I keep talking about prenatal depression, because that is also a very real thing. I'm going to go through the common signs and symptoms of clinical depression so that you can work out whether you might be experiencing something more serious than baby blues or adjustment issues. But do keep in mind, even if you're experiencing some of these symptoms, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're clinically depressed. It is the combination of symptoms and also how much they interfere with your enjoyment of life and your ability to function that determines whether something is a clinical depression or not. But let's go through the symptoms. Let's start with cognitive. First of all, you might experience total brain fog. You might not be able to think straight, to make a decision. You might have memory issues, finding yourself standing and staring vacantly into the distance and not remembering why you're in a specific place. You might find that you cannot concentrate, you cannot focus, you can't even read a page of a book. Then there's anxiety. You might find that you can't stop worrying, that you can't stop asking yourself what if questions, that negative thoughts just cycle around and round in your mind. These are common symptoms of anxiety. You might also have physical symptoms. You might have a racing heart. You might feel short of breath. You might get sweaty hands or shaking hands. These are all very common symptoms of anxiety. In terms of your mood, you might be really up and down, having wild mood swings from one extreme to the other. Or you might be flat, really flat and numb. Or your mood might be really low, where you cannot stop crying and you just feel sad and heavy all of the time. You could also have irritable mood, as in you're super reactive and you have a really short fuse and you blow up without any good reason. You might feel lots and lots of guilt and have negative thoughts about your life and the guilt and the baby going around and round in your head. You might not feel a lot of hope. You might feel trapped as if you're never ever going to get out of this. The last mood symptom is that you might find that you cannot find pleasure or enjoyment in the things that used to give you lots of pleasure and enjoyment. In terms of physical symptoms, there are plenty of those that go along with depression. For a start, your sleep might be all over the place because of the baby, but maybe you can't sleep even when you have someone to take care of the baby. Maybe you're not sleeping at all, like my client Jennifer. That is not a good sign, because some research actually suggests that depression is a symptom of insomnia and lack of sleep, rather than lack of sleep being a symptom of depression. So if you're not sleeping, you have to take it seriously and you have to take yourself seriously. Sleep is like one of those foundational things, isn't it? How do you feel when you wake up in the morning? If how you feel is utterly exhausted and unable to face the day, it's not a good sign. You might see big changes in your appetite. Maybe you have put on a lot of weight since having the baby, or maybe you have completely lost all interest in food. Either of those are potentially signs of depression. Another physical symptom of depression is a complete loss of libido. It is fairly normal for women to have a sharp decline in libido during pregnancy and following birth. But if the change in libido is extremely significant, if you have zero interest in sex whatsoever, then that could also be a sign. But remember, you may well experience many of these signs without actually being clinically depressed. But it's a certain group of signs in combination, and as I said earlier, it's about how much these things are interfering with your ability to live your life, to enjoy your life, and to function on a daily basis. If you can't get out of bed and you can't bring yourself to take care of yourself or care of your baby, that is very, very serious. Another symptom of depression is social withdrawal. You might feel overwhelmed, but you might also completely lose interest in seeing other people. Maybe hanging around with other people makes you feel bad because they all seem to be living their lives so successfully, or maybe they didn't ever have a problem after giving birth, or they seemed not to, and you can't help comparing yourself against them. But if you find that you are just socially withdrawn, you're just isolating yourself, and you're not interested in engaging with other people, it's potentially another negative sign of depression. Some women experience all of these symptoms to just a small degree. So they don't think that anyone is particularly serious on its own. But maybe you just feel like you're just not yourself. You are not yourself. And that's a horrible feeling. And if that is your feeling, you should take that seriously too. If your symptoms are accompanied by feelings of wanting to harm yourself or harm your baby, then the situation is a crisis and you need to seek help immediately. Even if you only experience a few of these symptoms, you need to get support. 2 out of 10 women experience some form of postnatal depression and need extra support. You are not alone. Keep in mind that postnatal depression or prenatal depression may not only affect you and cause you to be miserable, but it can seriously affect your partner and your family as well. So for everyone's sake, but most especially your sake, seek help. And I'm going to go through a few of the things that you can possibly do. There is no shame in seeking help and support. Yet a lot of women feel ashamed and they don't feel comfortable to reach out. But daring to express your vulnerability, daring to express how hard you're finding things can be wonderfully liberating. My first suggestion is that you join some kind of group. Whether it's a community group, a mom's group, or an online group is up to you. And of course depends on what's available for you. Sharing similar experiences with people going through similar things can be amazingly therapeutic. My second suggestion is that you take care of the basics. When it comes to mental and physical health, it is so often that I see that the people who are struggling are the people who are not taking care of the foundational aspects of their well-being. So get some sleep as much as you humanly possibly can. Eat nutritious, healthy food at regular intervals. Drink enough water. Get some sunlight. Go for a walk or some little bit of movement, whatever you can manage every day. These things are incredibly important to your mental and physical health. So if you don't have these things in place, then you will struggle. At any point in your life, not just when you've just had a baby or when you're expecting a baby and it's hard. Reach out to family and friends for support. Tell them how you feel. Express your feelings and how hard it is for you and how much you're struggling. And ask for help. You know, there's that saying, it takes a village to raise a child. There is a really beautiful truth in that. It is super hard to do it alone. If you can afford it, I seriously suggest that you consider getting paid help. A night nurse can be the most amazing therapeutic benefits that you can ever imagine because you can finally get some sleep. Or a nanny or a caregiver or a paid babysitter or whatever it might be. Maybe it's a lactation consultant that you need. My fourth suggestion is to rule out physical causes and issues for yourself, but also for your baby. If there's something going on or you're struggling more than other moms seem to, it could be that, like my client Jennifer, there's something physical going on with you or your baby. So take your baby to your doctor, your pediatrician, and make sure that there's nothing physical going on. And if you feel like your pediatrician or your doctor is dismissing you and not taking you seriously, then please seek a second opinion. Your baby could have some kind of tongue tie or some kind of reflux or some kind of stomach issue or some kind of problem that needs medical attention. And there's you thinking that you just can't cope, but actually there is something organic and physical going on. Suggestion number 5. If you feel isolated, you cannot bond, you're miserable and meeting many of the criteria that I mentioned earlier about the signs of depression, or even if you're just feeling low and you can't come out of it, then reach out to a licensed mental health professional or your doctor for you and make sure that you get the help that you need. You need to trust your gut, or if you're in the kind of state where you have no idea what your gut instinct is even saying, then go and get help. And trust your gut about whether the help that you're getting is the help that you need. Don't allow yourself to be dismissed. Too many women with postnatal depression or prenatal depression are kind of fobbed off with stories about baby blues and everyone's struggles. And yes, it is true that baby blues are a thing. Baby blues don't last for longer than a week or two right at the beginning. Everyone struggles, yes, but when you're struggling in such a way that it is interfering with your ability to enjoy your life and live your life to the full and to enjoy your baby, then it is completely okay to get some help and get some extra support and get to a place where you can enjoy your life and your baby, and you do feel like yourself, because you deserve that and you deserve all the support that you need. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click the like and subscribe buttons, and please let me know in the comments. Send me a comment. I love to get your feedback. Thank you for watching, and see you again soon.